When Heaven caught me kissing Ariana in the supply closet, I knew my life at the firm was over. What I didn't expect was the entire team turning their backs on me within hours, treating me like I had committed the ultimate sin in our conservative corporate world in downtown Chicago. The fluorescent lights buzzed louder than usual that afternoon as I walked back to my desk, every eye avoiding mine, every conversation dying the second I approached. Heaven, my supposed best friend for 3 years, sat 2 cubicles away and didn't even glance up. She had been the one who always shared coffee breaks and weekend plans, the one I trusted with my secrets until that moment. Now she stared at her screen with a tightness in her jaw that told me everything. Ariana had slipped out the side door already, her face pale, but I could still feel the warmth of her lips on mine and the terror that replaced it. By the end of the day, the whispers had solidified into silence. No one invited me to the usual team huddle. My inbox filled with polite but distant replies to my project updates. When I tried to join the lunch group in the break room, chairs scraped as people suddenly remembered urgent calls. Heaven led the charge without saying a word. She simply stopped acknowledging me, and the rest followed like sheep. I sat alone at my desk, stomach churning, replaying the kiss that had felt so right after months of stolen glances and late-night texts. Ariana was the new marketing coordinator, bright, funny, with a laugh that made the long hours bearable. We had kept it quiet because the firm's culture was old-school Midwest, all golf clubs and family photos on desks. I had a steady boyfriend once, the kind my parents approved of, but he never made me feel seen the way Ariana did. Now that truth was out, and the price was instant exile. That evening my phone buzzed with a single text from Heaven. "You should have told me. This changes everything." No apology, no support, just a line that cut deeper than any shout. I stared at it until the screen blurred. At home in my small apartment I called Ariana, voice shaking. She answered on the second ring, crying softly. "They're already talking about me too," she whispered. "I don't know if I can stay." We talked for an hour about how fast the world could flip, about the fear that our careers, built with late nights and sacrifices, might vanish because we dared to love each other. I told her I would protect us, that we could keep it low-key now that it was exposed, but even as the words left my mouth I felt the lie. The damage was done. The next morning the isolation hardened. My manager, Mr. Reynolds, called me into his office with a forced smile. "There's been some concern about team dynamics," he said, eyes on his notepad. No direct mention of Ariana, but the subtext screamed. I was moved to a different project, one with zero overlap with her department. Heaven walked past my new desk without a word, carrying a stack of files like I was invisible. The rest of the team followed her lead. Coffee runs that excluded me, inside jokes that stopped when I entered the room. Even the shared Slack channel went quiet on my mentions. I threw myself into work, typing reports until my fingers ached, but every keystroke felt hollow. At night I lay awake wondering if love was supposed to cost this much. My parents back in Ohio would never understand. They still sent me clippings about nice boys from church. I hadn't told them yet, but the dread sat heavy in my chest like a stone. By the end of the week the pressure cracked me. Ariana and I met in a quiet park after dark, holding hands under a street lamp. "I can't lose everything for this," she said, tears catching the light. Her words stung because I felt the same fear. We argued quietly, voices low to avoid drawing attention from joggers. She wanted to slow down, I wanted to fight. In the end we hugged goodbye without promises, and I walked home alone, the city lights blurring through my tears. The next Monday Heaven organized a team lunch without me. I saw the calendar invite flash across my screen and felt the finality. I had become the office ghost, present but erased. The cost of loving Ariana was clear. My career, my friendships, my peace. I didn't know then that this was only the beginning of the fight I would have to win years later. The isolation at work bled into every corner of my life until I could barely breathe. My parents called that weekend, their voices bright with news of my cousin's engagement. "When are you bringing someone home?" Mom asked, the question landing like a punch. I mumbled something about being busy, but the guilt twisted inside me. They had raised me in a strict household where marriage meant a man, kids, and Sunday potlucks. Admitting I loved Ariana would shatter them, and I wasn't ready for that war on top of the one at the office. Instead I buried myself in spreadsheets, hoping numbers could drown the ache. Ariana texted less and less. Our stolen lunches became impossible with the team watching. Heaven made sure of it, casually mentioning my personal issues in meetings so everyone knew to keep distance. One afternoon Mr. Reynolds pulled me aside again. "We're restructuring," he said, voice flat. "Your role is being reassigned to a smaller team." Translation: demotion without the paperwork. I nodded, throat tight, and walked out knowing this was the beginning of the end. That night I met Ariana at a coffee shop far from downtown. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't hide. "Heaven cornered me today," she confessed. She said if I didn't keep my distance, the rumors would follow me to every reference check. We sat in silence, fingers laced under the table, both of us weighing the price of staying together. Love had once felt like freedom, now it felt like chains. I told her I would quit before I let them break us, but she shook her head. "You can't throw away 5 years of climbing for me." Her words echoed my own doubts, and for the first time I wondered if choosing her meant choosing loneliness forever. The betrayal hit hardest when Heaven forwarded an old group chat to the entire department, one where I had once joked about my close friendship with Ariana. The message was innocent then, but now it read like proof. Colleagues who once high-fived me now stared with pity or disgust. My performance reviews suddenly dipped. Deadlines I met were questioned. I confronted Heaven in the parking garage after work, voice shaking. "Why are you doing this? We were friends." She looked me dead in the eye, keys in hand. "Because this isn't who we are here. You changed the rules, and now the team doesn't trust you." Her words cut deeper than any insult because they came from someone I had trusted with my life. I drove home in tears, realizing friendship had been conditional all along. My family visit the next month made everything worse. I flew to Ohio for my sister's birthday, smiling through dinner while Mom grilled me about dating. "You're not getting any younger," she said, passing the potatoes. Dad nodded, proud of my big city job. I couldn't tell them the truth. The words stuck in my throat like glass. That night in my childhood bed I stared at the ceiling, torn between the daughter they wanted and the woman I was becoming. Ariana called late, voice soft. "I miss you, but I'm scared." We talked until dawn, making plans that felt fragile. When I returned to Chicago, the isolation had deepened. My desk was moved again, this time near the interns who avoided eye contact. I started updating my resume in secret, the decision to leave forming like a quiet rebellion. The final straw came during the quarterly review. Mr. Reynolds cited team cohesion issues and suggested I consider opportunities elsewhere. I signed the severance papers with steady hands, but inside I was screaming. Ariana waited for me outside, eyes red. "We can figure this out," she said, but I heard the doubt. We spent that night at my apartment talking about starting over, about building something real away from the poison. Yet when morning came she left for work, and I packed boxes alone. The price of loving her was my job, my stability, my identity. I didn't know if I had the strength to pay it, but walking away from that building felt like the first step toward something I couldn't yet name. Leaving the firm felt like jumping off a cliff without a parachute. I moved into a smaller apartment on the south side, living on savings and freelance gigs while Ariana stayed behind, still navigating the whispers. We tried to make it work, meeting on weekends in hidden cafes, but the distance grew. She started canceling plans, citing work stress. And I felt the betrayal even though I understood. Heaven had won. The team had closed ranks and Ariana was surviving inside it. My parents sensed something was wrong during calls. "You sound different," Mom said once, worry threading her voice. I lied about a promotion, too ashamed to admit I was unemployed and in love with a woman they would never accept. The moral weight pressed down. Was I selfish for choosing Ariana, or selfish for hiding who I was? I threw myself into building a new path. Nights became days of cold calling startups, pitching my marketing skills honed over years. I landed a junior role at a tech firm in Evanston. Smaller pay, but no one knew my story. There I kept my head down, smiling through happy hours while my heart stayed locked. Ariana and I drifted. Our texts turned polite, then sparse. One night she called crying. Heaven told everyone we're done. I didn't correct her. The words landed like a slap. I hung up, staring at the ceiling, realizing love had become another casualty. The internal conflict raged. Stay loyal to a relationship that cost me everything, or cut ties and rebuild.
I chose survival.
I blocked her number the next day, tears burning, but the freedom that followed felt hollow. Years blurred. I climbed quietly, taking every extra project, mentoring interns, networking until my contacts filled a notebook. The tech firm grew and so did I, moving from junior to manager to director. My parents visited once, proud of the successful daughter, never suspecting the nights I spent questioning every choice. Family pressure never eased. Holiday calls always circled back to, "When will you settle down?" I smiled and changed the subject, the lie growing heavier. Social prejudice followed me too. Subtle comments at industry events about women like us making it hard. I kept my personal life sealed, dating no one, focusing on the next promotion. The cost was loneliness, but the payoff was power. One afternoon, a headhunter called about a leadership role at a rival agency. I interviewed fiercely, landing the position as VP of Strategy. The day I accepted, I stood on my balcony overlooking Lake Michigan, wind whipping my hair, and felt the first real shift. Heaven and the old team were still at the original firm, now struggling with layoffs. I didn't reach out, the wound was too deep. Ariana's name popped up once in an industry newsletter. She had moved up too, but I scrolled past, heart steady. The years had taught me that choices carried prices, and I was willing to pay for the version of me that refused to be erased. Little did I know the universe was preparing the ultimate reckoning. The acquisition news hit like lightning. My company, now a rising powerhouse, bought out the old firm in a multimillion-dollar deal. As the new VP, I sat in the strategy meetings where names from my past flashed across spreadsheets. Heaven's department was flagged for review, Ariana's too. I kept my face neutral, but inside the old pain roared back. The board named me interim CEO during the transition, citing my fresh perspective. I accepted without hesitation, knowing this was the moment years of silence and sacrifice had built toward. My parents called to congratulate me, still clueless. "We always knew you'd run things," Dad said. I thanked them, the secret still locked tight. On my first day back in the old building, I walked the halls with a new ID badge. The same fluorescent lights, same break room, but now I held the keys. Employees whispered when I passed. Some recognized me, eyes widening. Heaven was in a meeting when I entered the executive suite. I saw her through the glass wall, older. Lines around her mouth from the stress of a sinking ship. She looked up, froze, then forced a smile. I nodded once, professional mask in place. Ariana wasn't in that day, but her name was on the org chart. The moral dilemma hit immediately. Fire the people who had destroyed me, or prove I was better. I scheduled one-on-ones for the entire staff, starting with the old team. In private, I wrestled with the ghosts. Nights I paced my new corner office, replaying the supply closet kiss, Heaven's text, Ariana's fading calls. Family disapproval still haunted calls home. Mom had started hinting at therapy for my single life. Social prejudice lingered in subtle ways, but power dulled its edges. I decided on a path of measured justice. Evaluate performance, not pass grudges. Yet when Heaven walked into my office for her review, the air thickened. "It's been a long time," she said, voice steady but eyes wary. I kept it clinical, asking about her projects, but inside I saw the girl who had betrayed me. She left with a warning in her file, the first crack in her armor. Ariana's turn came 2 days later. She entered pale, professional suit crisp. "I heard you were back," she said softly. We sat across the desk, years collapsing. She apologized quietly for drifting, for letting fear win. I listened, heart steady, and offered her a chance to stay if she proved herself. She nodded, tears held back, and left. The decision felt right yet heavy. Forgiveness carried its own cost. The team watched, tension rising as rumors spread that the new boss had history here. I pushed forward, restructuring departments, promoting talent, quietly demoting those who had led the isolation. Each choice echoed the moral questions that had defined me. Was power revenge or redemption? The weeks turned into a high-stakes chess game. Heaven pushed back in meetings, questioning my decisions with veiled references to personal bias. I countered with data, letting results speak. Colleagues who once ignored me now sought my approval, the power shift palpable. Yet late nights alone I questioned everything. Had I become the bully? The cost of my rise was still loneliness, still the secret from my family, still the ache of what Ariana and I could have been. But as the firm stabilized under my leadership, I felt the tide turning. The woman who had been erased was now rewriting every rule. The confrontation peaked during the all-hands meeting. I stood at the front of the auditorium, lights bright on my face, the same stage where heaven had once presented awards I was never invited to. "We're building a culture of merit," I said, voice clear. "Past divisions end today." Eyes flicked to heaven in the third row. She stared straight ahead, jaw tight. Ariana sat in the back, notebook open, her gaze meeting mine with quiet respect. After the meeting, heaven cornered me in the hallway. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" she hissed. I met her eyes. "I'm doing my job. The same one you made impossible for me." She walked away without another word, but the damage in her posture was clear. Ariana requested a private meeting the next week. We sat in my office, door closed. "I never stopped caring," she said, voice breaking slightly. "But I was scared, and heaven made sure I stayed scared." I listened, the old love stirring but changed. She asked for a fresh start, not romantically but professionally, and maybe more if I allowed it. The moral choice loomed. Open the door again and risk everything I had built, or keep the walls up and stay safe. I told her we would see performance first. She left with hope in her eyes, and I sat alone wondering if second chances were strength or weakness. Family pressure exploded when my sister visited Chicago. Over dinner she pressed. "Mom thinks you're hiding something. Are you seeing anyone?" I almost told her everything, the years of isolation, the love that cost me my first career, the power I now held. Instead I deflected, the lie feeling heavier than ever. That night I called Ariana. Not for romance but for the understanding only she shared. We talked for hours, rebuilding trust brick by brick. Meanwhile heaven's performance slipped. Her team missed deadlines and I issued a formal warning. The old colleagues watched, some whispering that payback was coming. I ignored the gossip, focusing on results, but the internal storm raged. Was I healing or punishing? The climax built when the board announced my permanent CEO role. Champagne flowed in the same break room where I had once sat alone. Heaven approached with a forced toast. "Congratulations," she said, eyes cold. I raised my glass. "Thank you for the lessons." The room fell quiet. Everyone understood. Ariana stood nearby, smiling softly, our eyes locking in a moment that felt like closure and beginning at once. That night I drove along the lake, windows down, wind carrying away years of pain. The price had been enormous, but standing at the top I finally saw the woman I had fought to become. The final months solidified everything. I restructured the firm with fairness, promoting Ariana to lead her department after she delivered record results. Heaven received a severance package after repeated warnings. She left without a scene, but the look she gave me on her last day carried the weight of every betrayal. I didn't gloat. Instead I sat in my office reflecting on the choices that had defined the journey. Staying silent about my love, walking away from the old life, rising through quiet determination. My parents still didn't know the full truth, but I planned to tell them soon, ready for whatever came. The social prejudice that once crushed me now felt distant. I had built a culture where merit, not gossip, ruled. Ariana and I began meeting outside work, slowly, carefully. Coffee turned to dinners, conversations to shared silences that felt like home. One evening on the rooftop of my building she took my hand. "I'm proud of the woman you became," she said. "And I'm sorry for the cost." I squeezed back, the old spark reigniting without the fear. Love no longer felt like a liability, it felt like strength. The team adjusted, some apologizing quietly, others simply moving on. The drama that had once torn me apart now fueled a better company, a better me. Yet as I stood at the window overlooking Chicago at dusk, the moral questions remained. I had used the power born from pain to reshape lives, including those who hurt me. Had I become what I despised, or had I simply refused to stay broken? The choices were never clean, the prices never fully paid. In the end I chose to lead with both justice and mercy, but the line between them would always blur. So, was it wrong for me to rise above the prejudice and claim the power that once tried to destroy me? Or was becoming their boss the only true way to prove that love like mine could never be erased?